I opened the door automatically, thinking it was a delivery guy or my neighbor. But there stood a woman around 50, tired-looking, in a dark coat, with eyes filled with uncertainty and something else. She slowly raised her gaze and quietly said, "Hi, I'm your mother." I froze. "I really need your help." Those words echoed through 20 years of silence. Mother? My head was spinning. In front of me stood the one who had simply left me. She didn't die. She didn't vanish without a trace. No, she had willingly placed me, a newborn, at the doorstep of an orphanage and walked away. I opened the door automatically, thinking it was the delivery guy or my neighbor. But standing on the threshold was a woman around 50, tired, in a dark coat, with eyes that reflected uncertainty. And something else. She slowly looked up and quietly said, "Hi, I'm your mother." I froze. I really need help. Those words echoed through 20 years of silence. Mother? My head buzzed. Standing in front of me was the one who had once simply left me. She hadn't died. She hadn't disappeared without a trace. Nosha had willingly, knowingly, left me in infantin the doorstep of an orphanage and walked away. And now, after all these years, she's standing here. Tired, aged, a stranger. But all I could hear in that moment was the voice inside me saying, "This is the very woman who abandoned me at the orphanage door." I don't remember that day. I was only a few days old. But somehow, it became a part of me. As if deep within my body there remained a memory of cold and loneliness. It's not just a story someone told me. It's something that has lived inside me from the very beginning. The caregiver at the orphanage once told me, early in the morning, when it was still dark, someone rang the bell. They opened the door and there, on the doorstep, wrapped in a thin blanket, was me. A tiny bundle, without tears, without a sound, just lying there, next to me a plastic bag. Inside, nothing but a scrap of paper. On it, written with a trembling hand, was my name. Only a name. No last name, no birth date, no note of explanation, no "I'm sorry", no "I love you". Just a name. As if that was enough to give a child away, as if you could just leave and disappear. When I got older and learned this story, I spent a long time trying to understand. What could a woman who gave birth to me have felt? Was she scared? Ashamed? Was the whole world against her? Or maybe she just didn't care? But there was never an answer. And perhaps the most painful thing wasn't the abandonment. The most painful thing was the silence. No one explained anything. No one said why. No one said, "It wasn't your fault." I grew up with the feeling that I hadn't even deserved a goodbye. And somewhere deep inside me, this thought has always remained. She didn't even look me in the eyes. Life in the orphanage was like living in a world without color. There was no comfort, no warmth, no smell of home-cooked meals or the touch of a mother's hands. Just gray walls, unfamiliar faces, and a constant feeling that you didn't belong. From a very young age, I learned not to cry because crying didn't matter to anyone. No one came to hug you. No one asked, "What's wrong?" They just made sure you were dressed, fed and out of the way. I moved from one orphanage to another. Sometimes because of transfers, sometimes because I didn't get along with the staff. But the reason was always the same. I never felt wanted anywhere. Every time someone came, parents or potential adopters I hoped, I stood to the side, pretending I didn't care. But my heart raced like crazy. They'd walk in, glance around the group, sometimes pause on me, and then move on. I watched other girls being chosen clutching teddy bears, dressed in pretty clothes, leaving hand in hand with new moms and dads. And I stayed behind. I always stayed behind. As a teenager, I became angry, aggressive, a rebel. Not because I wanted to be, but because I thought that if I was bad, maybe it would at least explain why no one loved me. It was easier to be angry than to hope. Easier to pretend I didn't believe in family than to hope again and feel everything fall apart once more. But deep down, there was fear. Fear of always being unwanted, unloved, unaccepted. Fear that if I disappeared, no one would even notice. And honestly, back then I believed that. I was 11 when someone decided to adopt me for the first time. I still remember that day. New shoes, neatly brushed hair, and the caregiver telling me I had to smile to make a good impression. I tried so hard. Because this was my chance. My first real chance. The family seemed normal, a mom, a dad, and their biological son who was a bit older than me. They said they had always dreamed of having a daughter. That there was a room waiting for me, toys, even a dog. I couldn't believe my luck. For the first week, I hardly spoke not out of fear, but because I didn't want to break the moment. I looked at them like they were a miracle. But the miracle crumbled, very quickly. At first, it was small things. I wasn't called to dinner if I came in late. Their son could push me, say something cruel, and no one cared. I tried to be helpful cleaning, doing well in school, helping around the house. I thought if I was good enough, maybe they would love me. And then one day, after I accidentally broke a cup, the adoptive mother leaned down and hissed, "Don't forget, you're here temporarily, you're not one of us." Those words hit harder than any slap. That's when I realized everything they'd said before it was all a performance. There was no love, no desire to truly take me in. I was just a project, a try at doing good that they gave up on, that they didn't want. They returned me to the orphanage after 6 months. Coldly, without explanation. As if they were returning something unwanted to a store. I remember sitting in the car on the way back and not crying. There were no tears. Just emptiness. I sat there thinking, if even the ones who promised to take me as their daughter gave up, maybe something really is wrong with me. Maybe my mom was right to leave me. That became a new crack in my soul. Another in a long, growing chain. But I didn't know yet there would be more. So many more. For most people, school means friends, recess, first crushes, and the fear of pop quizzes. For me, it was just another battlefield. I came there with a blank stare, heavy thoughts, and skin stretched tight over pain. Studying was hard not because I was stupid, but when your soul is being torn apart from the inside by feelings of abandonment, betrayal, and worthlessness, math doesn't really matter. I often sat in the back row, hunched over, trying to be as invisible as possible. Kids can sense when someone doesn't belong, and they never miss a chance to remind you of it. Where do you live? Do you have parents? Why are you so weird? I froze every time I heard the word family. I envied kids who said, "My mom baked a pie," or "My dad took me to practice." I had no pie, no dad, not even anyone to call at night when things got too heavy. But there was one person. My literature teacher, Victor Pavlovich. He didn't pity me. He didn't try to show sympathy. He just saw me. He saw that I was struggling, that my silence didn't mean I had nothing to say, but that no one had ever listened. He'd leave me books after class, sometimes just sit next to me in silence with a cup of tea if he saw I was on the edge. And one day, he said something that stayed with me forever. "You're stronger than you think, not because you want to be, but because you were never given a choice, but you'll make it." Something clicked in me that day. I stopped waiting for someone to come and save me. To bring love, to hold me close, to say, "You're mine." I realized that may never happen. But I made a decision. I will survive. I will be strong. Even if no one needs me, I will need myself. When I turned 18, I packed my things into a duffel bag and left the orphanage. There were no tears, no goodbyes, not even much regret. No one was waiting for me there, and no one was waiting for me ahead either. Just me and a small, empty room I managed to rent on the edge of the city. I got a job as a waitress. Morning shift, then evening classes. Sometimes the other way around. Money was tight. I lived off instant noodles and sometimes fell asleep fully dressed because I was too exhausted to undress. But something was burning inside me, something I'd never felt before: determination. I had spent too long living like I needed someone's permission to exist. Now I'd decided I wouldn't wait anymore. I applied to college. The odds were against MI, had no tutors, no proper preparation, no support. But I studied at night, read during breaks between orders, scribbled notes on napkins. And when I found out I got in, I just sat down on the sidewalk in front of the building and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. I did it. It was there, in college, that I felt for the first time that I wasn't alone. The people sitting next to me in class didn't look at me with pity or condescension. We drank coffee in the halls, shared notes, helped each other prepare for exams. One guy once said to me, "You know, you're awesome, really strong." And I didn't want to hide. I wanted to believe him. Even just for a moment, to believe that I didn't have to be just someone who survived. I could be normal, real, accepted. That was the beginning of my new life. Not magical, not easy. But for the first time, it was truly mine. I graduated from college. Not with honors, but with pride. With every passed exam, every completed project, it felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself. Then came my first job. Modest, in my field, but steady. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had something I could control. The paycheck wasn't big, but it was mine. The decisions were tough, but they were mine. The mistakes too, but they didn't scare me anymore. A year later, I no longer rented just a corner in someone's apartment. I had my own one-bedroom place. The renovation was simple, but it was my space. My cup in the kitchen. My pillow. My walls. Every morning, I woke up with a quiet sense that I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. Not without fear, not with perfect confidence, but firmly. Work was going well. I kept learning, took on extra responsibilities, didn't shy away from challenges. And people noticed. Management promoted me to senior specialist. I didn't jump for joy. I simply walked out of the office, stood outside, and took a deep breath. Because it was proof. I did it. And most importantly, I did it on my own. Without a family. Without support. Without the woman who once left me on the doorstep of an orphanage with a scrap of paper. I built everything myself, without her. And with each passing day, I understood more clearly. I didn't just survive. I started to live. It was an ordinary evening. I had just come home from work, put the kettle on, taken off my coat, and suddenly, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I thought maybe the neighbors. But when I opened the door, my heart sank straight into my stomach. There was a woman standing on the threshold. Older now, wearing a wrinkled coat, her gaze heavy. A tired face, gray eyes, and something in those eyes felt eerily familiar. For a second, I just froze. Then she said, "Hi, I'm your mother." The world around me seemed to stop. I could hear nothing but the pounding of my heart and a soft ringing in my ears. She went on. I found you through social media. You weren't that hard to find. I'm sorry to just show up like this, but I really need to talk to you." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. Standing in front of me was the woman who had given me up as a baby, who hadn't even left a note of explanation. Not a single word of love. And now she was here standing in my doorway, looking lost, small, like time itself had folded her inward. I noticed her trembling. The way her hands clutched the strap of an old purse. Her face was gaunt, her lips dry. There was no pride in her, no strength, only exhaustion and desperation. I stood there, rooted to the floor. And one thought kept echoing in my mind. Why did you come? I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, feeling everything inside me tighten. My mother was standing in front of me like a stranger, and I didn't know what to do with that. Everything I'd ever imagined what this meeting would look like, how I'd face her, how it would be different, how I'd demand answers suddenly wasn't what I had expected at all. I didn't even know what I wanted, to understand her, to pity her, or just to say, leave. She sat in my chair, hunched over, almost as if trying to hide from something. I stood frozen across from her, unable to say a single word. But then she started to speak. Slowly, haltingly, as if each word was a risk. "I was young, so young when I had you," she said. "I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to be a mother. I was poor. I had nothing. Only a husband who drank, who yelled at me, who threatened me. Everything around me was falling apart, and I was desperate. I thought if I left you, you'd be safe. You wouldn't have to live in that hell." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I thought the orphanage would be better. I didn't want you to grow up in a life like mine." Her words fell like cold rain, quiet, steady, but they couldn't melt the ice that had formed inside me. I looked at her, but I couldn't feel anything except a cold emptiness. For so long, I had dreamed of this meeting, searched for answers to the questions that had tormented me for years. And now the answers were here. But there was nothing in them that could give me back what I had lost. She fell silent, and I didn't know what to say. The words were caught in my throat, but wouldn't come out. I dreamed of this moment, but now I don't know if I want to hear her. There was no anger, no relief. Only a strange sense of loss, a loss that could no longer be repaired. She looked at me again, as if searching for something in my eyes. But I couldn't give her forgiveness. That feeling, it was too painful. For so long I had searched, longed for answers. And now that I had them, I didn't know what to do with them. I stayed silent, and so did she. We sat in silence, and it grew heavier with each passing moment. I waited for her to say something more, but I wasn't expecting what came out of her mouth. It felt like a punch to the chest. "I need your attention, your time," she swallowed and looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "I'm seriously ill, sweetheart. I don't have any strength left. None. The doctors say I won't make it without help. I have no one. I tried, but everyone turned away. I'm not asking for much just for you to help me. Maybe I could stay with you for a while? Or at least help me with the treatment?" She said it like the words had no weight, so quietly and uncertainly that even I, standing right in front of her, couldn't believe what was happening. And I couldn't help but feel something inside me explode from the shock. This wasn't a request for a reunion. This wasn't about coming back into my life. This was a plea for me to be her salvation. And in that moment, I realized she hadn't come back because she missed me. Not because she regretted anything. She came back because she needed something, and that something was me. I stood up, took a step back, trying to gather my thoughts, but they slipped away like water through my fingers. I felt a deep inner conflict tearing me apart. On the one hand, I knew she was truly suffering, that her illness left her no choice. On the other hand, my whole life, everything I'd built, all the pain I had buried deep inside stood in opposition to her and every word she spoke. Why now? The thought echoed in my mind. Why not earlier when I needed her understanding? Why not then when I was a child in an orphanage, dreaming of someone coming, holding me and saying I mattered? She didn't see me. She only saw her need, and her words sounded like the very thing I feared most. "I need you because I'm weak, because I'm sick." I wasn't her daughter. I was her last resort. I couldn't meet her gaze. I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't ready. Would you like help continuing this scene or turning it into a longer story? I sat in my apartment, staring at the clock, but time seemed to have stopped. My mother had left, leaving me alone, but her words still hung in the air like a heavy cloud. I needed to make a decision. But how? I couldn't quite grasp what I was feeling. It wasn't just confusion. It was a real inner storm. I didn't want to be cruel, but I also couldn't ignore what was happening inside me. I needed to talk to someone who would understand, so I called my friend, Lena. "What did you do?" Her voice was anxious, but I could hear the concern in it. "Did you at least give her a chance to explain?" "She says she's sick, that she needs help, but I don't know if I can be her savior again, Lena. Honestly, I'm not even sure what she really wants from me." She didn't come back because she missed me. She came back because she needed something, and that something was me. Lena was silent, and I continued, searching for the right words. "I waited my whole life for her to come back. I dreamed about it. But now that she's here, I don't know if I want to let her back into my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I don't know if I can trust her, or if this is just another attempt to use me." Lena, after a pause, answered calmly but firmly. You don't have to be cruel, but you also can't forget who you've become over the years. You're strong, you've built your life, and you're not obligated to become a victim again just to help her. This is your life and you have the right to protect it. You don't have to sacrifice yourself just to please her. Her words settled in my mind like stones that finally found their place in the maze of my thoughts. But one thought remained. If I help her now, will it be out of a sense of duty? Or will I simply become again the helpless girl I once was, the one who was used? I knew this wasn't just a decision. It was a choice that would define who I was going to be moving forward. What if I'm being selfish? What if I don't help? I asked, because the thought kept haunting me. Lena replied gently, You're not selfish. You're someone who's finally learned to take care of yourself, and if you need time to think, you're entitled to it. But don't let anyone manipulate your feelings. I thanked her, but I still felt lost. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a choice between duty and self-respect. It was something much deeper. It was the moment I had to decide who I was now, and how open I was willing to be to someone who once betrayed me. For several days, I thought about my decision. I couldn't just ignore her request. I understood that she was truly ill, that her situation was serious. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't simply let her back into my life as if nothing had happened. I had been through so much, spent so many years learning to be strong and independent, only to return to being the dependent, helpless person I once was. And yet, I decided to help her. But not as a daughter, not as the little girl she left behind at the orphanage. I would help her as a human being, someone who had survived, despite everything that had happened. I contacted the doctors, found out what treatment options were available, and paid for the necessary procedures. I sent her all the information. It wasn't easy, every step felt painful. But I couldn't leave her in that condition. I helped, and that was enough. She called me several times, thanked me, asked to meet, but I never let her back into my life. I didn't want to bring back the emptiness that once existed between us. I didn't want to be the one to give her another chance to tear down what I had built. When we met for the last time, she tried to say something. She thanked me for the help, but her voice was filled with hope that I would become again the daughter she once abandoned. In her eyes, I saw a silent plea for forgiveness, a desire to bring everything back, as if time could somehow be reversed. But I couldn't do that anymore. I helped you, I said firmly, without looking away. But you left me back then. When I was small and defenseless, you left me at the orphanage doors. I can't get back what was lost. Now I choose myself. I'm not going to live in the past. You weren't there when I needed you, and I can't be here now just because you need me. She was silent, as if my words had wounded her, but I didn't care. I had made my choice. And now, as I looked at her, I no longer saw the mother who had walked away from me 20 years ago. I saw a woman who needed help, but wasn't ready to give me what I had longed for: love, acceptance, care. I turned and walked away, and though it was hard, I felt a growing sense of relief inside me. I chose myself. I was no longer willing to be anyone's dependent. I was ready to be myself. When my mother left, after her treatment was over, I felt as if the weight I had been carrying with me all this time had finally begun to lift. We didn't grow close, nothing like that happened, but we talked. There was a moment when I finally said everything I had been holding inside. I don't know, maybe she understood. Maybe she didn't. But it mattered. I finally said what needed to be said. She left, and she was gone from my life. Not in the way I had once dreamed of her being there. She didn't return to my life as a mother, didn't come back to fill the gap she had left behind. But I didn't feel like I had lost something. I didn't feel regret. When she left, I didn't feel anger or pity. I felt that I had closed off that old pain. I had shut the chapter of my life that had kept me restless for so many years. And most importantly, I did it not for her. I did it for myself. I didn't let her become the source of my pain again. Now, I understood that even though I had once longed for her presence, for her love, in the end I had to find a way to love and accept myself. Not because of her. Not for her. But for me. I could move forward without that empty space in my heart I had once tried to fill with her absence. I wasn't broken. I was strong. And I no longer let the past dictate my future. The scene shifts to a cafe where I sit at a table, smiling calmly. I'm sipping coffee, enjoying the moment. Life had moved on, and now I could feel how easy it was to breathe. Outside, the sun is shining brightly. People pass by, and inside me there is a quiet and peace I had been searching for so long. This was my victory, insignificant to others, but enormous to me. Voiceover. Sometimes people come back not to right their wrongs. They come back to remind you how far you've come without them. You've learned how to move forward, to build your life, and not depend on their mistakes. And it's not always easy. Sometimes you hope they'll take a step toward you, that they'll change, that they'll stay. But here's the truth. Sometimes you're the only one who can save yourself. The camera slowly moves in on the heroine's face. Her expression becomes confident, and her smile genuine. Help if you want to, but never betray yourself for someone else's guilt. Your life is your choice. You can forgive, you can offer help, but never forget who you are. Never forget that you deserve respect. You are strong, and no one has the right to take that strength from you. She takes another sip of coffee, and her eyes fill with light. She smiles, and the camera slowly pulls away, leaving her in this new, free, and confident world.